There's no turning back, even while we sleep. We will find you acting on your best behavior. Turn your back on Mother Nature.
Everybody, T-Wave!
So I like all of my little jokes and stories to rhyme. That way, even if you don't think they're funny, you can at least appreciate that my brain working like this takes up an awful lot of my time. Just think of me like a musical act, but I'm much more gallant because I'm not hiding behind a crutch like having actual talent. My mom's always been very concerned with her appearance, even though she only ever buys clothes on clearance. Like, she finally got a Fitbit. She loves getting her steps in, but what's sadder is she never did the 12 steps that really matter. My mom hates that joke. She's like, I'm not some lush. I'm like, Mom, the first step. She's like, hush. Putting the holly in alcoholic. I'm just kidding. She's the bomb, but she was a single mom, so growing up, we were pretty broke. My first bike was gently used, not bespoke. And Holly never wanted her financial baggage to be my haulage, so she always told me, whatever you do, go to college. And she was so supportive that I heard her. I went to college, sort of. I went, but I got a degree in the dramatic arts because I know a lot, but I'm not that smart. Smart people know a lot too, but they do stuff with what they know. I know how much student loan debt I still owe. Thousands of dollars a year so people in their 50s could tell me I play pretend. Wrong. Money well spent. But I don't regret going to school to learn how to act. They taught me to ask dramatic questions, not just regurgitate facts. Dramatic questions like, my God, what have you done? Or, do girls really just want to have fun? Dramatic questions like, to be or not to be? Or, would anybody like to start an orgy? Orgies are theater kid energy. It is off the charts. It's like, there are no small actors, only small parts. And career-wise, that degree has opened up doors for me hand over fist, like restaurants, end of list. For my survival job, I work at a cafe. Sometimes when I wipe down a table, I'll use my BFA because then at least I'm able to say I used it for something that day. But I love restaurants. Like, I love restaurant people. They're the best. Like, I love me a chef who can take a sauce and thicken or thin it. Chefs are like comics. You know, they think in minutes. And they also have that artistic soul because each dish not only has to taste good, it has to look good, too. Because we eat first with the eyes and last with the butthole. People don't mention that second part as much, but it's true. So, one night I'm at work asking the usual dramatic questions. You know, if I think, therefore I am I, therefore I think, would you like to start with something to drink? And as I'm clocking out, a friend of mine who is a girl tells me our favorite band is playing a show about an hour away in Reno, the biggest little city in the world. Should we go? And I say, why not? You know, because I ask dramatic questions. She says, great, but first I want to go home and change, and if I can make a suggestion, you do the same. I go, ugh, I know, I'm a mess. We go back to her place, she throws on some makeup, slaps on a dress, and then she asks me if I want to get dolled up too in some of the stuff that she's got, and because I ask dramatic questions, I say, why not? And of course I want to get dolled up. So I'm non-binary, hold your applause, thank you. No, it's sweet, but it's cloying. Non-binary people, we're the vegans of the gender world. Like, valid, but annoying. Do you have any dairy pronouns? I use the they suite of pronouns, as in, I went to the comedy show, I saw one of them, their, theys. He was okay. I'm a they of the official sort, too. Like, I have the X on my license and passport. The reasons why are legion, so just to give you the gist, basically I looked around at what's happening in the country and I was like, good time to get on a government list. The singular they can be difficult for some fascists. They're like, no, they is for plurals. Well, I'm not here to argue with the masses. And in this day and age, if you're gonna choose to be a Nazi, I thank you for only choosing to be a grammar Nazi. Shout at me not to end a sentence with a preposition if that's what you're about. If that's what keeps you up at night, I don't have less rights, I have fewer rights. You're right, you're far, far right. If you're still confused, don't worry, apparently so am I. But I can make it seem less scary, right? So like, there's man, woman, non-binary. There's red wine, white wine, and non-binary. Correct. I am not a wine. I'm just thirsty. Don't mind me, just taking stock. It means I'll use the men's room, but I'll talk. So yes, I want to get dolled up. I want to look en femme and effete. I borrow her dress, her makeup, her shoes. She has huge feet. It's not my best work, but whatever. It doesn't need to be. We're going to Reno. It's Las Vegas for the third-time divorcee. Atlantic City without the sophistication and class of New Jersey. We wind up missing the show, but we didn't get all dolled up just for kicks. We still want to kick it before we get back to the sticks, and after all, we're in Reno. And what Reno lacks in everything, it makes up for in casinos. And casinos are open 24 hours a day. We figure, okay, let's play some craps. Who knows what'll happen? Maybe we'll walk away millionaires. Spoiler alert, I'm here. We don't. But who cares? We're drinking and we're having fun, and then my friend goes, I gotta pee again. Fucking White Claws. Then she says, come with me, and I pause. Not because I don't understand, why do women always go to the bathroom in groups? I completely understand that. It's conversation, privacy, and sitting down. It's a hoot. But bathrooms, for being a rather mundane spot, around this time were in the news a lot. If some talking heads found out you were using the wrong ones, they'd pout. They're the same people who struggle with the singular they, as it turns out. But my friend is like, this is what girls do, don't be a cock. And I can't argue with that. And I was dressed like a girl after all, so I go with her, and I don't talk. I pee. Now, I don't mean to brag. I pee all the time. And usually it isn't considered a crime. It's one of the two things I'll usually use a bathroom to do. It's either that or, number two, diddle any children I can find and wipe my ass with the flag, Hail Satan. I pee, and I wash my hands, and as I go to leave, there's this man waiting. He's just real stocky, crew-cut hair, he's wearing a suit, real, like, ex-military vibe. He's got the earpiece to boot. And I'm like, oh, he's got to go. So I step to the side, but no, he says he wants to see my ID. And my dumbass is so naive, I'm like, he thinks I look too young to be in a casino? How flattering. He didn't even glance at my birthday. He was just looking for one letter. And there was a different one he thought should match better. He just had a hunch. It was like the worst Scantron I ever took. And I've taken a bunch. I went to college, sort of. But look, there it was. One dramatic question, wrong answer. He looked at me like I told him his mom had prostate cancer. He's like, you're not allowed to be in there. Why not? I didn't actually ask that, of course. I couldn't even form the thought. I just got embarrassed and mad and sort of spat at him like a Dilophosaurus. Gave him that hawk tooth. And look, I don't want to go preaching to the chorus, so before you start searching for your trauma dump punch cards, this isn't going to be a drama show where, like, I was a drama kid, and also, I experienced a drama. I'm not here to drone on for liberal likes like some hack Obama. I want to make you laugh, not just sit through my therapy session, but I also want to investigate a dramatic question, because, like, I know I'm not a girl just because I throw on a dress. But why did I sort of think that if I did, and maybe added a pearl necklace, it would dupe the douche from deducing it was a dude in the room with the dames dropping deuces? Is this Womanian uniform as ancient as Mesopotamian cuneiform? When did we decide that it's ladylike to like long hair, or a makeup that makeup makes men queer? In other words, well, how did I get here? Why did I think I was wearing girl clothes? It's a question that cannot be answered in prose. So to answer it, I consulted the pros. In order to find out why we conform to certain looks, I wound up reading a lot of books, which is like this old-fashioned thing with like spines leather-bound. I read a whole book about Cleopatra, and you know what I found? I did not have to read a whole book about Cleopatra. She lived closer to the constriction of Spanx than she did the construction of the Sphinx. But I read it so you would know, as you're sipping your drinks, that this show is well-researched and legit, and that I'm not just making up all of this shit. If you're not frugal with your free time, you can check my sources. But before we get properly started, hold your horses. I have a quick caveat. Now, obviously, an hour-long show condensing 20,000 years of the human experience into an hour is going to be thorough and nuanced. But just so we're on the same page, for the next 45 minutes or so, I'm going to be talking a lot about gender, which is a subject that can make some people feel a little tender. I'm going to be making some broad generalizations about the bods of men and women, also known as broads. When I say men and women, I mean cis people adhering to the gender expectations and presentations of their era. This is just a way to make things more succinct and more clear. It's the way they treated gender in days of old, and as you can see, it's comedy gold. It's the way they treat gender at a department store. I know there's not just two genders, there's a lot more. Look, at the end of the day, I don't care what clothes you wear. I don't care where you got them. I don't care if you wear men's tops or women's tops. I just care that y'all are aware that I am an active bottom. I'm just kidding, I'm verse. That's why the show is in, anyway. By round of applause, speaking of, is anybody here queer? Oh yeah. Although, to be honest, I did expect there to be more of you here. But maybe some of you are queer and you just didn't realize, and that's why you didn't make noise. Because queer used to just mean girls who like girls, boys who like boys. But in this day and age, gay men, lesbian women, you're like golden retrievers. It's like, oh, how cute, how basic, I'm over it. It's like, you only have sex with other men? That's a little homophobic. There's so many other kinds of sexuality now, it's the best, right? Like bisexuals? People who pay for sex? Nice work if you can get it. There's pansexuals. We are people who fornicate with skillets. Thank you, ma'am. Gives new meaning to the term pot sticker. Bam. There's demisexual. If you're not familiar with this brand of affection, demisexuals are people who have to feel a romantic connection before the sexual feelings start swimming. These people are also known as straight women. There's sapiosexual, which means you're annoying. Asexuals who aren't on the sexual spectrum. Bisexuals who like honey in their rectum. The list goes on. After that explanation, against all odds, are there any straight people here by round of applause? So brave. No, sincerely, thank you all for being here. And also, I'm hoping I can get a volunteer. Fantastic. What is your name, my straight friend? Dustin. Dustin. One of the things I have noticed in preparing the show is that history can be kind of dense, which can make it feel inaccessible and kind of difficult to relate to, which can make it boring, which is not what I'm going for. So would you do me a favor and would you mind representing all of humanity?
Sounds good.
That's the confidence of a straight man. I didn't even tell you what you have to do. It's okay, you don't have to do anything. You're just gonna have to sit there and let me gesture to you now and then like this. Does that work for you?
That's great.
All right, round of applause for Dustin, everyone. Oh, and Dustin, because you are a straight, white, cis man, you are also representing the patriarchy, which I don't know if you've been on the internet lately, but that makes you the bad guy. Hey, but it also means you've got the most power, so you've got that going for you. For now. Caveat over, now I can explain. To answer my question, let's go back to the beginning. Bang! Then. That's where I lose all the Christians in the audience. We kept banging over and over until most of us stopped throwing our feces, and we started cooking our food and mutated to become a new species. Now, at this point in history, men and women looked more or less the same, just androgynous apes without mortgages or shame. But this is when a lot of folks think we began to distinguish between gender based on presentation and roles, as opposed to sex, which is based on reproductive organs and holes. Now, the argument tends to go that because Dustin is so much stronger and bigger, he gets to go out and hunt the saber-toothed tiger and risk his life to bring home the prehistoric bacon, while women, so delicate and fragile, they stay home gathering plants and basket making. Here's the thing about animals, there are like 4. You'd have to be some kind of animalologist to name more. In the Bible, ever heard of it, Dustin? In the Bible, it says God made all the animals for Adam, which, gay. Then it says Adam gives all of them names. It only takes him a day. 4 animals. I'll list them all for you now. Really, when you boil it down, there's birds, fish, lizards, and cows. 2 legs and feathers, bird. No legs and wet, fish. 4 legs and hair, cow. A goat is a little cow. A moose is a cow that is big. A pink oinking cow is also known as a pig. A dog is a barky cow, and you know what? A cat is a cow that loves showing you its butt. And so, for the record, am I. 4 animals. There's a bunch of plants, and we all had to know what all of them were, dude, because plants were clothes and houses and medicine and food. And also, it turns out, women were the ones doing the hunting anyway. I'll have you know, Kara Wells Scheffler at the University of Washington, I told you this is a very well-researched show. U of W's Dr. W.S. dug around and found that the number of societies in antiquity with female hunters was 79%. 4 out of 5 times, it was the dames killing the game, but the first anthropologists were all men. So they claimed that all of the skeletons they found in the graves that they robbed, well, he must have been a man who was good at his job. That's why he was buried with all those pointy sticks. I'm so good at my job. It wasn't until a few centuries later she pointed out, yo, he was a chick. Besides, hunting was a rare thing, like a U-Haul outracing a Ferrari. A scenario I only mentioned to set up the rhyme for Yuval Harari. Who mentions in his book, Sapiens, we were all of us gathering plants regardless of who was wearing the pants. When Dustin did see a mammoth, aka big cow with horny mouth, again, same. Killing it was such a big deal. When he did, he'd yell like a boy in the South. But it was something that happened so rare whenever it did. He was like, we have to commemorate this. So let's put a drawing on the cave wall over there. Like a 5-year-old with their doodle on the Frigidaire, or Washington crossing the Delaware. It wasn't until we started farming that we messed up and started the harmful gender divide with the way that we dressed up. But let's get everything in its proper place. Before we get dressed, we address the face. Now for me, being outside the binary, the way I express my gender is a bit fluid, a little airy. It's based mostly on how I'm feeling when I wake up in the morning. It's like, do I feel more like a girl today, or do I feel boring? Do I feel more like a boy, or do I feel like trying to make it through the day without crying? Thank God for waterproof mascara, right? Or rather, thank Dior. Now I can cry in the walk-in for a minute or 4 and look fierce when I get back on the floor. I found out about waterproof mascara the hard way, because when I was a teen and figuring out if I was gay or whatever, I was experimenting with makeup, but I was doing it in secret because the moment I wake up, I would be full of shame, because I was brought up believing in our daddy, hallowed be thy name. So I had to do it furtively so nobody rejected me, and one day my mom came home unexpectedly, so I tried to scrub it all off with cold water, but whoops. I was left with these dark circles under my eyes like an alcoholic reporter just looking for a scoop. Just like straight up raccoon. I thought I played it off so casually too. She was like, "Is everything okay, honey?" Yes, why wouldn't it be? Is everything okay with you? I don't know why the raccoon has a French accent. They have a French vibe to me. Like they always seem like they're judging you, but they're the ones eating trash. That's French. It didn't help that I was using trash product for the aesthetic. I was not using something like Kylie Cosmetics, made by television's own Kylie Jenner, as seen on TV. Now that is an American woman. In that, I want her to stay away from me. But that is what I would call her. She has a net worth of over $1 billion, and like any true American, she brought herself up from nothing apparent, just her know-how, some elbow grease, and extremely rich parents. Kylie made her fortune in cosmetics, beauty products, from the Greek cosmos, meaning order, and medics, meaning medics. It sounds so grand, cosmetics. It's giving fame, it's giving shake-up. What's its other name again? Oh yeah, makeup. That's a mean name. That's a fact. It's like, here, put this on. Why? To make up for all of that. All of the names are mean. Lip gloss, to gloss over the fact that your lips are deformed. Eyeshadow, as in please stand in the shadow because your eyelids are not the norm. Blush, you should be embarrassed. Oh, and because this is a show about gender and I went up and brought up a Jenner, I'll address the elephant in the room. The only thing I'm going to say about Caitlyn Jenner, the former Olympic athlete who's ready to go in front of courts and say little girls shouldn't get to play sports, she's not a pioneer or an icon or a survivor. All she has ever done for women is perpetuate the stereotype that they're bad drivers. Because she killed a man with her car. As a species, we've been using makeup so long, we don't really know when it began, but we do know that it used to be more commonly worn by a man. Soldiers would wear makeup the way their horses would wear a saddle. Now, different cultures, of course, had different practices before going into battle. If Dustin had been in ancient China or ancient Babylon, he would paint his nails before getting his battle on. Here's a fun fact. The first nail polish was made out of crushed bugs. Thugs would be like, I will crush my enemies like I will crush this. Oh. Well, that's lovely. He'd inspire fear with a manicure, while Viking berserker Dustin preferred to braid his hair, much manlier. Viking berserkers also took psychedelic mushrooms before going into the battle zone. One time, I took psychedelic mushrooms and tried to paint my nails, and that was a battle all its own. But you can see how makeup had its origins in war, though, for sure. Like, anybody here ever use an eyelash curler? Yeah. Tell me that is not for cock and ball torture. You know, my mom, it's kind of weird to go directly from cock and ball torture to my mom, but I'll unpack that later. My mom can't put on mascara without her mouth open wide. I think it's because there's a gene deep down inside that knows when she does it, she's supposed to be doing a war cry. But then somewhere along the line, things took a twirl, and makeup not only became femme, it became only for girls. So much so that if a man puts on some CoverGirl to make himself look finer, we have to rebrand it for him and call it guy liner. I hate that so much. And we do it all the time without a second glance. Oh, they're best friends? They have a bromance. His bag with a shoulder strap? That's a merce. It's uncanny. Like, we don't have a babysitter, we have a manny. Women don't do this. When a woman puts on slacks and a blazer, we don't call it a woot. When a woman grills, it's not a Barbie BQ. Lily Ledbetter wasn't fighting for equal pay. And in the end, if a girl has a friend, she just calls her her girlfriend. Although I will admit, that did make me think my mom was a lesbian for most of the 90s. But in my defense, and I say this without venom, she had a mullet. And she wore a lot of denim. So that's makeup. Moving on then to jewelry. Piercing is the first rule of beauty made plain. Oh, would you like to be pretty? First, there will be pain. And yes, while for civilizations all over the world, they've had piercings for ages, until recently in the West, the idea of a man getting his ears pierced was outrageous. Like, there was this thing when I was growing up, when it was a bigger deal if you were queer, that there was like a gay ear. Did y'all have that here? Yeah. People used to think that if a man had a hole in his left ear, well, it means he likes having other things left in his holes, dear. But back in the day, according to this Bustle article I scanned, if Dustin got a hold of some gold, he wanted to keep it close at hand. Rings were common, of course, but these are men swinging swords around, your hand gets lopped off, you're crawling on the ground, you gotta go spend some of that money on a hook. That's not a good look. So instead, loop your money into your dangly bits and your gravy, right? That's nature's bank. That's checkings and savings. But gold is also heavy, so when Dustin decided that women also counted as things, he draped them into heavy necklaces and tiaras and rings. But the idea was the same. If he died far away from home because he caught something venereal, there would be money to pay for his burial. Funerals are very important. We have always been terrified of what happens to us after death, which brings us to our first reminder in the show that we are all going to die someday. We are all going to die someday. And that's okay. If you came here with somebody you love, know that both of you are going to die someday, and it has nothing to do with belief. If you came here alone, you can look at me and know that death will probably come as relief. Clap if you are married. Keep clapping if you are married and happy. It always gets louder. Don't worry, I'm not going to ask you, what's the secret? I don't care. You'll still wind up dead. And yet I do want what you have. I want to be wed, and I don't know why. Because for two people in a happy, loving relationship, the best case scenario is that when one of you dies, the other is filled with woe. That is the best case scenario. It's Mario saves Princess Peach, then Peach mourns Mario. You're in your rocking chairs, and then somebody's rocking stops. You're holding each other's old wrinkled hands, and then somebody's hand drops. Hopefully before you forget one another. You know, my grandmother, she had dementia and aching joints, and I will never forget the last thing she said to me. But she did, and that's my point. Actually, that's not bad. Okay, the best case scenario is in Titanic. When the ship's going down and everybody's in a panic, there's that quick scene with the elderly pair, and they're holding onto one another, and all their faculties are still there, and he's whispering something to her, and she's closing her eyes as the freezing water continues to rise until they Mario. That is the best case scenario? Don't worry, I felt you all pull back on that one. It's okay. I know things got a little weird. It's okay. Death is nothing to be feared. That's why we make sure to pay for funerals, and it's why we invented a place where we can go pray. I'm going to ease the tension now by talking about organized religion. Catholic Mass is where I used to go because, like many little Catholic boys, nobody told my ass I could say no. You didn't laugh at that joke. It's like you wanted those priests to abuse those kids for nothing. I was brought up Catholic. I wish I had been brought up Jewish. I do. I wish I'd been brought up one of the chosen fewish, because the two religions, they have their differences, but they're more or less the same because they are both founded on guilt and shame. They just go about it differently. Like Catholic guilt, private, to say the least. It's take your guilt, keep it secret, put it in a box with a priest, which turns out not a great combo, a priest and a secret in a box. Don't worry, that's the last one. Jewish guilt is much more lighthearted. It's much more, hey, bagels and lox. It's we're all in the box with one another, but I'm going to tell you it's killing your mother. That's the difference, though, is Jews share how they feel, they kvetch. Catholics tell you, bottle it up, you worthless wretch. So it's more serious. Jewish guilt isn't communion, it's community. It's more musical theater than it is superstition. It's tradition, tradition. Catholic guilt is this one guy. He died, and it's all your fault, Dustin. With Catholics, one tragedy was everything, so they use that strategy. With Jews, it doesn't matter as much because everything is a tragedy. So it's less serious, less all in. The whole religion is like that. It's like, God said wear a hat. Whoa, 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 whoa. Not a whole hat. It's genius. God said, give the boy a penis. Whoa, 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 whoa. Not a whole penis. And the holidays reflect this. Every spring, the Catholics have Easter. Okay, for the next 3 hours, sit on your keister and watch this torture porn, but don't let it awaken a fetish. By the way, do you know why the symbol for Jesus is a fish? It's because one time he caught one that was this big. Nailed it. But that's Catholic style. Drink this blood so that you can be saved. Whereas Jews have a dinner and talk about the time they were slaves. which might also sound intense, but don't lose your head. They also drink bad wine and eat almost bread. According to their scripture and Stacy Schiff, the Jews were slaves in ancient Egypt. Nobody did funerals quite like the mummies. And this is because they had a lot of money. And as is true, whenever somebody is very rich, they were terrified of the whole afterlife sitch. So when it comes to jewelry, yeah, you can bet. Talk about the bigger the hoops, the bigger the hotep. Dripping in gold, but also, odd. So when Pharaoh Dustin, who is both king and god, knew that the end was on the way, he would gather all of his slaves and say, "Excuse me, everyone, hey, I have an announcement to make. Put down that stick." Oh, it's a snake. Tutankhamun. Feather, eye with a line under it. Bird, plant, guy sitting down, different bird. Which translates to, when I finally meet my doom, I want you all to build me a tomb and fill it with all of my little butthole cows and jewelry. Now, I know what you're thinking, double wavy line, guy sitting eyeball. This seems like it only benefits me. But here's what we're gonna do. You build a tomb for me, and then you get 2 friends to build one for you, and then they'll each get 2, and they'll get 2, and you see what I mean? It was the original pyramid scheme. Speaking of MLMs, like my degree in theater, it's not like I'm an expert, but let's talk about hair. Now, for the longest time, long hair was the purview of one-named divas, like Eve and Cher. But that's sort of confusing, right? Like, long hair is the basic option. You can see that clearly without a LASIK adoption. We had long hair long before we invented barbers. It was bang, no barbers, no barbers, no barbers. And then bam, barbers everywhere. Barbers as far as the eye can see across the land. The barber of Seville, the demon barber of Fleet Street, Barbara Russ Streisand. Hello again, queers. If you don't do anything to your hair, it will get long. And cis men, Dustin, you're not doing anything wrong, but dudes are typically the kings of not doing anything, especially when it comes to grooming. Like, a friend of mine went on a date once, and I was like, "How did it go? Did he sweep you off your feet?" She was like, "Yeah, it was sweet. He had sheets." That was it. That was her review. He had sheets, and that was a good review. That's 5 stars. That's the best most straight men can do. She dated him for years. He broke up with her. I know. So, why do most men these days have their hair cropped short? Well, there's the argument for soldiers and the warrior sort. Army men have to have a buzzed head because there's no hair pulling in war, Mom said. But some of history's toughest warriors, beast mode's modest beasts, were in ancient Greece. Greece was divided into city-states, basically national cliques. The athletes, the jocks, the tough guys, the Dustins, the biggest dicks. These were the Spartans. These are the dudes who would take little boys from their moms at age 6 and then send them to Greek heaven if they couldn't bench 300 by age 7. But the Spartans weren't rocking. It's okay, they're dead now. At least, I hope so. My God, can you imagine? According to Alan Henderson, the #1 haircut in Sparta was the mullet. That was the look, #1 with a bullet. It was business in the front, war party in the back. It couldn't be grabbed during an attack, but you could still flaunt it for the ladies. My mom would have fit right in the late 80s. Democracy may die in the dark, but it turns out the cradle of democracy was a trailer park. Then there was Athens, the indoor kids, the theater majors, the math fans, the nerds developing economics and astrology and triangles isosceles, so someday finance bros could yammer on about Ethereum while tarot girlies could be like, "You are such a Pisces." Athenians were responsible for most of the topics on a first date-o, and Athens was also the home of Plato. Of the philosopher Greeks, he's most people's fave. His major work is, of course, The Cave. Now, the moral of The Cave is if you tell somebody that a lie or a projection is true, when you show them the real truth, they will get mad at it and reject you. It's like in Star Wars. Obi-Wan tells Luke, "Darth Vader killed your father." And then later, Vader's all, "No, I am your father. Join me and we'll be unstoppable." Luke's reaction? "That's not true. That's impossible." Or like how Coca-Cola was like, "We don't do business with the Nazis," but then they made Fanta. Or how one Christmas I stayed up all night waiting for Santa, but what I discovered gave me pause because it turned out my dad had another family. I'm in danger of getting off track, and I know what that danger brings. Why don't CrossFit bros these days run around looking like Billy from Stranger Things? The short answer is Rome. The long answer is the Romans. Thanks, bud. They're the ones who came after the Greeks, and Dustin thinks about them at least once a week. This is when things started to really change, and the reasons why aren't too strange. Like, America, we love Rome. Rome is daddy. Dustin, you're going to be Rome now. Give me a thumbs up. Perfect. And one day, daddy looked over the Mediterranean at Sparta and was like, get a haircut. And Sparta did, and they kept their mouth shut because Dustin had conquered them and set their town on fire and added them to the Roman Empire. Here's how empires work. Most scholars concur. If you got conquered by the emperor, you now belong to the emperor. Like if you got conquered by the Assyrians, no doubt about it, they'd be like, you're Assyrian now. I'm Assyrious about it. If you got conquered by the Persians, you'd go full immersion and be like, start purring, little butthole cow, because you're Persian now. You got conquered by the Ottomans, you better strut, because face down, feet up, that's the way we like to, what? It never gets the reaction I want it to. It's my favorite part in the show. I will not be cutting it. You got conquered, so you got to conform and wear your conqueror's uniform. It was like how Disney bought Star Wars, and we're like, we may not have had it first, but we made it shinier and also worse. Daddy is going to take his favorite bits, like your gods, but now you have to wear daddy's clothes on your conquered-ass bods, and you're now Roman nation. It was like reverse cultural appropriation, like the opposite of yoga. Now, initially in Rome, like in Greece, Dustin wore a toga, basically a dress. But as they went further and further up the globe, it got less and less apropos to wear a robe. Back in Italy, yeah, you want to dress with a thin weave because it's a Mediterranean climate. You want to let the boys breathe. But as they went further north, those centurion guys wanted to prioritize their nuts not freezing to their thighs. Yowzers. So the soldiers, the manliest men, standardized wearing trousers. An empire has standards, by which I mean like the official width of a road or the official way to brew tea. Not the thing I'm supposed to have for me. I know you're not supposed to be people-pleasing. You're supposed to play hard to get. I am extremely easy to get. My affection is so freely given, I'm basically a human participation ribbon. Or like HPV. No, I mean, they had standards that they wanted you to wear as long as you were in Rome. That way, you were Roman no matter how far you roamed from home. So by the time they got to England, across the channel from France, back then called Gaul, the standard had become flannel and pants for the sake of their balls. The exception, of course, being the Celts, who killed it in kilts because a Scot will rock a frock in freezing weather and keep warm with a liquid sweater. Scottish men are like girls trying to get in the club in December. Like, oh, this is going to be a night to remember. Or like your one friend who's really into cold plunges. Like, yep, just out here doing some lunges. I am all about Wim Hof. First thing in the AM, love to take a dip in the ice trough. You know, the pain is all in your brain. It doesn't hurt so terribly. It's like, my guy, just go to therapy. Did you get left in the car one New Year's Eve and now you're like, you know you don't have to feel if you know how to breathe? For a couple hundred years, things were going pretty well. One thing leads to another, yada, yada, the empire fell. We don't need to go over the fall of Rome. It doesn't matter. It's in the past. Long story boring, there was a plague and a war and a huge divide of class, economic recessions, infighting exacerbated by racism, and openly corrupt politicians. So we don't need to go over that. It's ancient history. Instead, let's focus on Mr. JC. Jesus was great. He was against violence and money, so naturally the government paid somebody to kill him. Okay, true, but not funny. He's featured a lot in this book called the Bible. Ever heard of it, Dustin? Here's the Cliff Notes with minimal libel. It's got a lot in it, and his salty wife, and it's full of begetting, and it's very gory. And then there's this bit called the Gospels, where Jesus' friends keep tagging on bits of his life story. They're like, yeah, I was with Jesus this one time, and we didn't have any fish, but then everybody got to have fish. So it was fine. Oh, one time we were at a wedding, and Jesus made a wish, and everybody got to have wine. One time, Jesus was in the desert and Satan took him from behind. Then Jesus' friend Paul writes a letter to the city of Corinth. Actually, he writes two. Guess he was in a sharing mood, but writing a letter to an entire city, bit rude. Bit of a Karen move. That would be like if I wrote a letter to Sydney, Australia. Like, dear Sydney, I have something to say about all of your paraphernalia. I'd like to speak to your manager. Hello, England? Here's the thing, man. Maybe I'm just in the dark, but why is an opera house their most famous landmark when there's never been an Australian opera? Which personally I think is because the Australian accent sounds like you gave the Irish accent vodka and then left it in the sun too long. A demonstration? Of course. I was going to meet me mate for a drink and a song, and then as I was walking down the pass, I noticed him with a bonny lass, and I was like, hey, Sheila, why don't you ditch that zero and get with a hero, you duckman? No. But Paul did that. And he was like, while I've got y'all there, I want to tell you specifically what men and women wear. And if they cross-dress, they are abominations. These are God's words. And the Corinthians were like, yes, chef, heard, because, plot twist, when the empire began to teeter, Emperor Augustine was like, maybe we should take a page from Pope Peter, because not to be contrarian, but at the gates there's all these barbarians, and things aren't looking so good for me. The theater kids are asking if it's time to start the orgy. I'm going to make an executive decision. Let's make that Jesus fella's book the empire's standard religion. So everybody who worships him will be like one big family, like cousins. And for extra measure, let's kill everybody who doesn't. The main thing religion does, and this is true for all religions, all cults, all flavors of God, from Catholicism and Judaism to Peloton and improv, in addition to keeping us calm in the face of the fact that we are all going to die someday. Having a religion passes blame and grants permission. Religion passes blame and grants permission. When you have a God that everybody in your country worships, it becomes extremely easy to use that God to justify things like building warships. And then when the people are starving and want to revolt, the king can say, hey, buddy, if it were up to me, I'd be just like you and farm all day. But the thing is, yeesh, God said I'm king. So it's kind of out of my hands, but hey, thoughts and prayers. The Bible is the original, don't be mad at me, this is coming from upstairs. It's not just divine will, it's a memo from corporate. So what happened when Rome fell, if I can paint you a portrait, is basically they were like, Daddy's not coming home for a while, which is kind of scary, so we're just going to keep doing things Roman style and keep wearing what he says to in these pages in a time that came to be known as the Dark Ages. Then comes the Middle Ages, which is a way to classify a time period I've always thought was a little outrageous. How can we be sure it's the middle? It's like saying you're having a midlife crisis at 50. Like, sure, it bugs you that you look like Elmer Fudd, but you really think you're going to last another 50, bud? By 1300, and who cares, the former Roman Empire had splintered and grown again as independent kingdoms. In particular, France, Portugal, Spain, and England were able to gather hardcore naval strength, which makes sense, because they had beaches and shores of enormous length. You have a lot of beaches, it's a good idea to have a lot of boats. The Swiss, who had no beaches, were left alone to become the hot chocolate goats. People came from all over the world and were like, this chocolate is the best ever. And they were like, we know it is. We've been making it forever. And the people were like, really? How long? And they were like, we don't know, but we should probably find out. Bing bong. Then they became the #1 name in the mother flippin' cuckoo clock game. They were simply the best. What time is it? Chocolate time. At breakfast? Yes! They knew we just couldn't get enough of that chocolatey bliss, which is why, to this day, we honor the bird god of the ancient Swiss, who was cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. This is the dumbest bit in the show. Around this time, the best army in the world was the Persian Empire. You remember them? Kitty goes purr? Yep. They were the beachless half of Europe. No navy, but they had a shoe that they could lock in a stirrup because it was made with a high heel, which made shooting arrows on horseback more ideal. And according to this piece I saw on the BBC, which in this context means British Broadcasting Corporation, not the other thing. Anyway, One day, the king of France, whose name wasn't Dustin, it was Louis, because they were all named Louis, he heard about the Persians and their good archers, and he was all, Sacre bleu! What do they have that we don't have? Patooey. And his generals were like, shoeies. So Louis started wearing high heels so he could pretend to be a soldier too. So the French court started wearing high heels because everybody loves Louis. But then, and this is true, Louis felt self-conscious that everybody else was so tall. So he went, excusez-moi, y'all, but I just got this memo from corporate, aka God, aka the Most High, and he says that the only people who can wear shoes shod with a heel are this guy, as in moi, myself, and I, and also the rich. That's why they're called the upper class. And then the French poor were like, ooh la la, bitch, I'ma uppercut your ass. Because actually, we just talked to corporate, and we like the shoes because the cake looks great, but we looked around and we have no bread. So we came up with a solution, which is that you can drop dead. Then they had a revolution, which made the short king shorter by about a head. So now, to the French people who fought for democracy, the high heel was seen as a symbol of the aristocracy. So they threw the heel out because they were no snobs. But a bunch of French shoemakers were like, are you trying to put us out of a job? We only want to make the high heel. How can we reconcile this with our democratic ideals? So a bunch of French men got together on the Champs-Elysees and were like, if women want to wear heels, then that is okay. I'm playing fast and loose with the timeline here, but don't scoff. This whole revolution thing really took off. America had a revolution of its own. Ever heard of it? Bup, 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 bup. In 1770, who cares? Our forefathers, which forefathers, gay. Our forefathers got together and sent each other some faxes and decided that they didn't want to pay taxes. I mean that they loved freedom from taxes. By the way, if you ever want to piss off a member of the GOP, agree with everything they say, call them the Founding Daddies. Yeah. Founding Daddy said, right to bear arms. I think that queer and I are saying the same thing. Confuses the hell out of us. What confuses the hell out of me is if you look at a painting of the Founding Daddies, like, they're wearing makeup, they've got high heels, they have long hair, like wigs, but long-haired wigs. The dudes who decorate their trucks with "Don't Tread on Me" flags are obsessed with queens who are doing drag. This was less than 300 years ago. It might as well have been yesterday. So how do we get from that to the hyper-butch look of today? Well, around this time, called the Enlightenment, all over they were talking about how science is the best and destiny manifest. So they sent everybody west in a covered wagon in pursuit of life, liberty, and chasing the dragon. But they realized on one of those star-spangled nights that people who were women or not quite as white might also want things like rights. This is when they started doing lots of gross stuff to fill the lulls in their days, like measuring skulls and inventing the concept of race. And it's also when they decided to make gender correspond to reproductive organs. And they wanted that set in stone like somebody who had locked eyes with a Gorgon. So they turned to an ally who would not stop until the job was finished, the greatest empire of the industrial era, the British. And by a lucky coincidence or a clerical error, the name of the Queen of England was Victoria during the Victorian era. Don't be mad at me if that doesn't line up with your media. I got most of this next bit from Wikipedia. Victoria was an evangelist, which meant she wanted to save everybody's soul by hook or by crook. And the way she was going to do that was by making them behave the way they say to in the good book. She took Paul's letter to the Australians very seriously. So much so that she would get all dressed up in her regalia and send anybody who didn't act properly Christian to Australia. According to Victoria, a woman is anyone with a womb. Now, how can you tell if she's got a womb without getting all up in there? Well, according to her friend Paul, put her in a dress and make sure she grows out her hair. And even though Britain only stretches from Old York to Dover, because of the British Empire, this became the standard the world over. Further, a man contributes to the empire by being a soldier or a plumber. A woman contributes by using that womb to have babies because we win wars with numbers. I mean, because every life is sacred. That's the truth as long as Vic's on the throne. Until they take their first breath, and then they are on their own. Oh, and by the way, that is how you use the singular they. Now, it was at this point in history that I got tired of writing the show. So, We're gonna skip ahead to World War I. The Great War happened, and overseas to fight went the boys, leaving the geezer who oversees the factories with a choice. Shut the smokestack down and lounge around all day like some kind of smack addict, or, for a change of pace, let the girls take a crack at it. Record scratch sound effect. Wait a minute. By employing girls, doesn't that mean admitting that they're people? Yes. And as the saying goes, people just want to have fun. And by fun, I mean sex. And these girls knew that there was work to be done, so they hit the town and painted it red in search of the few men in uniform who came back not dead. And the girls had a uniform of their own. In the roaring 20s, all a gal needed was a flapper dress that fell just below her ass, some dancing shoes, and enough booze to drown out the memory of her high school sweetheart whose lungs had been blistered with mustard gas. It's okay, they're dead now. At least I hope. But there was one part of the uniform that needed a little bit more powder in the keg. After all, no flapper would be seen on the dance floor without a bare-shaven leg. But why? Paul didn't say anything to the Australians about leg hair. Who cares if women are shaving or using Nair or hair-removing lasers? The answer, of course, is companies who make razors. See, backing up for a second. Back during World War I, all the manly men in the trenches, with their manly beards so nice, got manly infestations of manly lice, which caused manly infections that rotted away their manly jaws. So a clean-shaven face became preferable to looking like Santa Claus. So shaving became more soldierly, aka more manly, for every Private Tom, Dick, and Stanley, and razor companies grew to fill the void. But the CEO of Gillette, Dustin, was annoyed. You're not off the hook yet. Was annoyed, as Rebecca Herzig shares in her book Plucked, that half the population wasn't buying his product, and that half now had an income to spend, so it had no excuse. So, a massive ad campaign was conducted to seduce popular perception toward a notion that would increase sales for blades and shaving lotion. This is the first time in history something that was a feminine fashion trend wasn't the vestige of a more masculine trait, but something completely fabricated by a corporation in order to sell a product to a brainwashed consumer population, which sucks. And it also started this trend of things considered femme being certain qualities that reminded certain men of certain infants, which, even setting aside the pedophilia of it all, means all of the products that they peddle at the mall, from moisturizing creams to lingerie, are capitalizing on the age-old fear of age, because getting older is a reminder that we are all going to die someday. And worse, it is the root of my least favorite joke ever. It's this old gem. When people, usually older women, are like, "It's my birthday, I'm turning 29 again." 29-year-olds are fucking amateurs. Why on earth would you be jealous of her? What have you done at 29 years old? Sort of gone to college like a total dunce and blown up your entire life once? Switched from doing E to doing K? What is it, your first day? Older women are awesome. They've been around the block before. When I was 29, I hooked up with a woman who was 74, and she knew things 29-year-olds cannot even begin to know. She knew nipples aren't just for show. In the time that she has been alive, she saw gender go from kissing the war goodbye and poodle skirts on Housewives to flower power and the Beehive to women's lib meaning working 9 to 5 to Jamie Lee and leg warmers and being all flexible to whatever we were thinking when we invented metrosexual, which is people who like having trains run on them. She saw gender go through this huge expansion, and she didn't trip. In the end, she was like, "I don't care what they wear, let me at them nips." So be proud of your age. It is a testament to the fact that you survived this long in this messed up place. Hey, the more a brain thinks, the more wrinkles it has, so don't shoot poison in your face. Plato said adulthood doesn't even start until you turn 40. Of course, Plato also advocated for having sex with children, so we're going to ignore. If you don't know, now you knowsium, Plato wrote a different book called The Symposium, and a huge part of it, I swear to God this is true, is if you're young enough to play with Plato, Plato would like to play with you. So we're going to gloss over what Plato said, much in the same way Plato used to gloss over anyway. That's the last one. My point is, if somebody asks you your age, don't blink a bit. Be like, I'm a grown-ass woman, so bring your A game, because I've seen some shit. So there you have it. Makeup, jewelry, long hair, dresses, high heels, shaved legs. Except for that last one, everything that's considered femme is just a leftover trait from a soldier from way back when. If I knew then what I know now, when the biggest little dick in the world kicked me out of that casino, I wouldn't have been spinning, I would have been blurting, actually, historically speaking, I'm dressed like a soldier. Dramatic question. Who am I hurting? But there is one last aspect considered girlier or just for ladies that I couldn't mention earlier because it didn't show up until the 1980s. We're post-Marsha, pre-Tom on the timeline of Brady's. Era of shopping malls and music vids, when people would be shopping for toys for their kids. And the way Big Toy saw it, they were like, let's get wild. Why sell one toy per family when we can sell one per child? Let's make it so boys and girls each have to have their own thing. How do we do that? Color coding. Let's make it so little girls have to have a color. And if I can make a suggestion, because their tummies already make life pretty dismal, let's make it the same color as Pepto-Bismol. Dustin said, make all little girl toys pink. Easy bake oven, everything but the kitchen sink. Selling more toys to tots was the entire motive for babies' cots being color-coded according to their genitals. Big gender reveal got into bed with a surgeon general. Now, we already know this to be true. Girls are pink, boys are blue. Boys are blue, girls are pink. We already know that, or so we think. Because did you know it used to be the other way around? Peggy Orenstein discovered in her book, which I read cover to cover, that little boys used to get the pink hat on their heads because pink is the softer hue of the more masculine red, which is a manly color because it is the color of blood. Because you know what they say, cis men are always dealing with blood on like a monthly basis. Little girls were put in blue because blue was the Renaissance symbol of chastity. And even to this day, if we want to make a girl seem innocent, we put her in blue. Dorothy with the lion, Alice with the rabbit, Wendy with the crocodile. If she goes to another world and was written by a pedophile, she wears blue in the flick as a marketing trick. And I know this bit isn't like laugh out loud funny, but hopefully it's at least /mildly interesting, and you can earn some money and hold your own on your next trivia night and get another question right instead of letting the free pitcher once again get got by that group of Silicon Valley tech bros calling themselves Gmail Nanjiani, who gave everybody else a spanking because you didn't know Alan Menken cinched his EGOT in 2020 with a daytime Emmy win for Rapunzel's Tangled Adventure, and okay, sure. I hear you say you don't recognize the legitimacy of the daytime Emmys, even though we both know Whoopi Goldberg cinched her EGOT with a daytime Emmy win for The View, and you could have gotten a bonus point if you knew her birth name is Karen Johnson, and I don't care if this rant is my swan song and it's the last thing I let skate past my dentures. Alan Menken brought it just as hard for Rapunzel's Tangled Adventure as he did for The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, and Aladdin, and who, by the way, all feature princesses who wear blue. I'm so sorry for yelling that at you like a jerk, but this is just the way my brain works, because when my grandma used to babysit for me, she would feed me bits of donut dipped in coffee while bouncing me on her knee and watching Jeopardy. I'm just going to say that one more time because it kind of contextualizes this whole show. When I was an infant, one of my caregivers gave me drugs I could barely process with my liver and spleen in the forms of sugar and caffeine while I stared at a show on a TV screen where people were rewarded for knowing useless facts. I'll take reasons I'm like this for 4, Alex. They don't do that to lab rats anymore, but Pat did it to me, so I have to impart it unto thee, even though history isn't really my passion. You think I wanted to spend the last hour mansplaining women's fashion? No. I'm wired to tell you this so that you will do something with what you know, because we have to do something. Because, I don't know, if you ask me, Gen Z doesn't seem too crazy at being at the end of the alphabet. I'm not personally stoked on the Middle Ages turning out to have been named accurate. I mean, look at the state of things. There's a plague and a war and a huge divide of class, economic recessions, infighting exacerbated by racism, openly corrupt politicians, plus climate apocalypse brought on by greenhouse emissions. This isn't happening in ancient times. It's like the saying, history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. So we have to do something. And I know there are people trying to do something. I've seen them take to the street, and I've joined them too. I put my money where my mouth is. I get on my feet. I see my community coming together for a common cause, and that unity gives me hope, but it also gives me pause. Because I saw some catchy signs and a charismatic person gave a speech, and somebody else started to sing about the kind of hope that tomorrow can bring. And I was like, wait a minute, I recognize this. This is theater. This is church. And please believe me, it is not the message I am trying to besmirch, it's the method. Because whether you're in the audience or in the pews or in the street, it's the same thing. We're all appealing to a higher power, but that higher power is not listening. So we need to escalate what we're doing, and this just in, we need to start by killing Dustin. Not Dustin specifically, but who Dustin represents. The bourgeois faction. Eat the rich is this show's call to action, but I mean literally eat the rich. I'm serious, Soylent Green that bitch. Start with the ones on golf courses, they're grass-fed. Tell them, we're going to eat you unless you use all of your money to end world hunger instead. You can put them in a sandwich or prepare them with teff. If you're at a loss for how to cook them, talk to me. I know a chef. Somebody told me after a show once that that's not very realistic, that an audience isn't going to leave revolutionary and cannibalistic just because of something I say. But it beats doing nothing, and hey, I mean, come on. We're all going to die someday. But wouldn't it be cool if we didn't take out all the other cows on the way? I was hoping to end with more of a huzzah, but I'm not sure I got that right. Anyway, I'm T. Wade, that's Mandrill. Thank you. Good night. Married with a lack of vision. Everybody wants to